Okay.
So Sushant, I think last talk which we talked about sugar saga, part one, it was very well received by a lot of people, and people did come back to us saying that this was very useful, and they are looking forward to the part two, which we had promised to the audience.
Mm.
So let's talk about sugar, diabetes, Alzheimer's, much more in detail, now this time, so that people can understand the real intricacies involved in this whole thing.
Yeah. So I think this today is a great time to discuss this because today is World Health Day, right? And
Yeah.
and I believe because mental health is impacting a lot of people, stress, depression, anxiety, cognitive disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism in children, right? So it
Yeah.
is going to be next epidemic of chronic diseases, right? So,
Correct.
before we get into this, it is important to understand, again, we discussed last time that, how sugar triggers inflammation inside the gut, inside the body. Just when you're eating a lot of artificial sweeteners or sugar additives, even, the naturally occurring sugar, which we assume it is naturally occurring, which actually are shown on various food labels, are actually added from outside because there are only few things which have naturally occurring sugar, like milk, grains, fruits, and vegetables, right? And again, fructose, you know, is poorly metabolized in small intestine, and it is metabolized by a lot of bugs in large intestine. So probably it's just a summary of some of what we discussed last time, right? And again, that's why fruits to be consumed should be consumed whole fruits rather than juice, because when you drink juices, it doesn't have the fiber, which actually do not feeds the good bugs inside the gut. And then when you eat too much sugar, it leads to growth of a lot of pathogens, a lot of fungi, which can trigger inflammation inside the body, right? Similarly, so we
Correct.
need to understand, one of the very important function of the gut microbiota is its communication with the brain, right?
Mm.
So gut and brain are, communicate with each other through various biochemical signals, right? So if you see, itself has around 100 million nerve cells, which as a network is called enteric nervous system, ENS, right? And it
Yeah.
directly communicates with the central nervous system in the brain, right?
Mm.
Uh, via multiple ways, via immune system, via neural network, even hormones, or what we call is vagus nerve, right? So essentially all the communication between gut and brain happens through a vagus nerve, right? So, and this do impact our mental health, because consider this, if we are going for an interview, or if we are tense or we are nervous, right? We see butterflies, we actually experience butterfly in the stomach. It's because gut brain axis communication, right? And a lot of people don't
Mm.
understand. So probably if you are too much stressed, or anxious, or maybe worried about something, you may have heartbeat fast, or you may have digestive issues, bloating. Again, it is all
Correct.
linked to this communication, right? So essentially, when we are eating wrong things, especially when we are eating too much sugar, or the forms of sugar which is actually feeding wrong bugs inside the gut, so it leads to gut dysbiosis again, uh, which triggers inflammation, right? So when it happens inflammation, so it tells immune cells, and immune cells go to the trauma side to address the issue. But what happens is, during this inflammation, a lot of these microbes release cytokines, right? And these
Yeah.
cytokines actually cross the blood brain barrier, right? So I'm keeping it very simple for the readers, for the listeners to actually fairly understand. So this, through this vagus nerve, this cytokine is like a bad thing, a bad molecule, which is going through vagus nerve to the brain via blood brain barrier, and it overactivates your HPA axis, which is hypothalamus
Mm.
pituitary gland and adrenal gland axis. When it activates,
Learning.
it actually leads to release of cortisol, right?
Mm.
That's why it
Mm.
makes you feel stressed or depressed. Again, when cortisol is released, it further leads to it gives a message to gut, oh, your body is getting attacked. So gut stops all the non-essential functions. So you have bloating, constipation, then you have again gut dysbiosis. Again, when you have gut dysbiosis, there is you know uh, high activity of estrobolome, which produces estrogen, right? So I'm
Correct.
just debating a bit, but just helping people understand why it impacts various functions, right? So
Mm.
it actually leads to overproduction of estrogen. So it blocks a particular protein which is required for producing thyroid. So that's why people who have high estrogen have low thyroid levels, right? So again, because of this, there are, because of low thyroid level, there's a lot of skin issues, acne, eczema, and so just by having a bit of sugar, or having which triggers stress level, or maybe having stress which triggers again gut dysbiosis, right? It can have multiple impacts of various functions inside the body, right? From your hormonal imbalances to estrogen to weight gain, and that is one of the reason why we also gain weight, right? So
So
because
these are all, yeah, these are all very important issues with, all of us, all the ladies and gents and, whatever we are discussing. So
mm,
good that, you're decoding the whole thing, vis-a-vis microbiome and how we can balance it. So yeah, please go ahead.
So, so, so this is the reason why high consumption sugar leads to stress, depression, anxiety issues, right? And let us talk about a very serious thing, which is Alzheimer's, again, dementia, right? So if you see, globally, 45 million people are suffering from dementia, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
this starts at least 15-20 years back, right? So essentially, again, it is generally caused by neuroinflammation, so inflammation in the brain, which again is, now research has found that it is all connected with gut dysbiosis and the activities and function of trillions of bacteria living in the gut, right? So
correct.
essentially, let us decode this into two parts. So one is, so how do we, so there's a particular protein, what we call as amyloid beta, right? Which
Mm,
actually is the a bad toxin, inside the brain, right? Which actually
right.
which become a plague, and which impact your memory and cognitive functions, right? The point is how this amyloid beta enters the brain, right? Because it has been found that this particular protein actually leads to neurodegeneration, and leads to situation of Alzheimer's and dementia, right? But
Mm,
how does this particular protein enters the brain, right? Again, it is very deeply connected. So there are two things to it, right? Another deeply connected with the gut dysbiosis, because specifically when the gut is imbalanced, right? So
mm,
a lot of these bacteria, proteobacteria, and E. coli and citrobacter and salmonella, all these bacteria who are gram negative bacteria, who are a commensal and pathogen both, so probably they do bad things inside. So they start releasing lipopolysaccharides, right? Again, so it was found that the people who are suffering from Alzheimer's had elevated level of LPS in their brain, right?
mm,
As well as
mm,
high level of LPS in hippocampus and cortex in brain, right? Even in the
okay.
plasma levels, the LPS was very, very high as compared to healthy controls, right? So
Mm,
how does this LPS reaches the brain again? A lot of these these LPS actually, when releasing too much LPS, it leads to intestinal permeability, what we call is leaky gut, right? And all this LPS crosses the blood-brain barrier, right? It alters your blood-brain barrier. It leads to a blood BBB permeability, which is called blood-brain barrier permeability, and it enters the brain, right?
mm,
So again, that is one way which leads to production of cytokine and chemokines, and it leads to neuroinflammation. But on a bigger side, these bacteria, like especially E. coli, salmonella, and citrobacter, right? They produce this protein called amyloid, right? And
mm,
and these amyloid travel through vagus nerve, crosses BBB, and then they blood-brain barrier, and then they reach the brain, right? So there, it travels from gut to brain, and then these amyloid actually you know uh, impacts your brain functioning, right? So again, so how it happens is, let us go back a bit, right? So there are certain cells inside the brain, what we call is microglia, right? Microglia is like, they regulate the defense mechanism. So if it's like an immune system, right? So if something bad or some infection or some virus is coming, right, these cells get into act, they do inflammation and kill them, right? uh, that's how neuroinflammation comes to a normal, and then brain is working fine. But uh, when you have gut dysbiosis, and when you have these lot of this lps and amyloid entering the brain, so microglia is obviously constantly doing inflammation. So it constantly releasing started chemokines and cytokines, right? And it leads to neural death. It leads to cell death of various cells, right? And that is again a reason for cognitive decline. Right? So essentially what happens is these gut microbiota actually overexpresses microglia inside the body when it's through release of LP and through release of amyloid, right? Which become a plague inside the brain, right? So the point here is, how do we actually make sure that amyloid is minimized or it's suppressed, right? Or so, and where the sugar thing all comes into picture, right? So here the biggest thing is, right? So brain is an insulin sensitive organ, right?
Correct.
So essentially, again, brain gut talk to each other. Gut tells pancreas how much of insulin has to be released, right? That's how we regulate our glycemic response, insulin response, right? So again, a lot of this insulin is traveling from pancreas to through blood-brain barrier to brain, which is required for normal brain functioning. We need glucose and we need insulin for normal brain functioning, right? But what happens
Correct.
is, so people when they have type 2 diabetes, right? So this insulin releases a particular enzyme which we call as IDE, insulin degrading enzyme, right? So
ID.
right, so this actually clears the excess insulin in the brain, and it makes sure that you don't have excess insulin, right? uh, Also, this IDE also kills this amyloid beta, the
Mhm.
protein, right? So
Mhm.
in most of the cases, when people are suffering from type 2 diabetes, right, or are pre-diabetic, right?
Mhm.
So in most of the cases, the insulin level is less because of insulin resistance. So
Mhm.
the insulin cannot produce a lot of IDE, right?
Correct.
Again, you do not have IDE, so you cannot, because of those inflammation done by gut, and microglia is is underrepresented. It is doing a lot of pathogenic activities, doing a lot of inflammation, producing cytokines. So you don't have the right IDE to actually clear out the amyloid betas, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it converts into plaque, right? And it impacts your brain functioning, right? So essentially, that is the way when we are a pre-diabetic, or we have type 2 diabetes, where we have not entered into chronic position where we are taking external insulin to administer our glucose level, right? But whatever insulin are being less released, so ID is less. On the flip side, right, when we have taken, so this is also in case of type 1 diabetes people, because they don't have uh, capability to produce insulin inside the body, right? Even on the
Yeah.
flip side, when you're taking external administration of insulin, right, so the level of insulin goes up, right? When it
Correct.
goes up, again it travels to through BBB to blood-brain barrier to brain, and again it releases IDE, right? But IDE is more involved at that time in clearing out the excess insulin rather than amyloid beta, right?
Yeah.
And that is why the amyloid beta is also high. So ID, who is responsible for clearing amyloid beta, doesn't clear, doesn't is more busy with clearing insulin, in simple words, right? So it is not only case of with only what do you call only diabetic people, because see, people who have high glucose levels or high sugar level also have memory loss issues, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the more the glucose level, the shorter the hippocampus, the shorter the cortex, right? So so that is the reason why Alzheimer's is also called type 3 diabetes, right? Because
Mm.
it is linked to insulin resistance, right? So
Resistance. Yeah.
so it's just it's having excess sugar, or having different forms of sugar, or maybe uh, having artificial sweeteners which have a cascading effect on your insulin response, on the insulin production, again on the brain health, right? So this is really, really important to understand, because we only see sugar from a metabolic health perspective, right?
Yeah.
We see, okay, uh, sugar can lead to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and it can lead to kidney disease, but we really don't know it also triggers mental health issues, right?
So, Sushant, so we are talking a lot of science here, and you have beautifully explained the science behind Alzheimer's or insulin resistance, or how our overexpressive immune system, because of this wrong cascading, is responsible for creating chronic diseases. But for the audience, for the benefit of audience, now we have to really decode this science into something, which the audience can take it home, from this particular discussion. So what do you suggest, from gene fertiletics, what do we suggest to the people, what should they exactly do so that they have a better control on this whole thing?
Okay, so let us get back to a few things. So essentially, what is happening? So let me deep dive a bit into the preventive healthcare market. What is happening, and why people are going wrong, right? So all the chronic disease, lifestyle disease, we develop over a period of time. For every individual, it is different. It can vary from 5 years, 7 years to 15 years to 20 years, right? So you cannot eat some sweet and say overnight I had this chocolate and I have type 2 diabetes. You don't do that, right? So essentially it develops over a period of time, and then when
Yeah.
you yeah, so every month, every year, just to manage those, because you have some certain symptoms, you don't know why those symptoms are there, because symptoms manifest differently in different individuals, right? So you don't know the root cause, because nobody is decoding the root cause. They're just focusing on managing the symptoms, right? So when you are managing the symptoms, you end up paying more than 10,000, 15,000 rupees in a month on doctors, on tests, on your insulin, on prebiotics, probiotics, on, you know, on medicine, drugs, a lot of these things, right? And even now, gyms and health coaches and trainers, and a lot of these things, right? So and
Yeah.
then someone comes and says, okay, you give me 3,000 rupees a month, and I will reverse your diabetes. I've seen a lot of these advertisements happening. I will reverse diabetes. I will reverse obesity. Which is wrong, a common sense.
Of these are, yeah, a lot of these are fake claims,
Yeah.
probably, just, it's a sort of clickbait, just to get people hooked on to the whole thing. So
Yeah.
what you created over the years can be addressed with due course of time with the right kind of approach, rather than, somebody saying that we will just get rid of everything. I do not subscribe to that theory, being a biologist, coming from healthcare. So very well said. Please go ahead.
So essentially, you can't say, okay, I spend maybe, if you are, suppose if someone is having type 2 diabetes, that person spends at least 8 to 9,000 rupees a month, on managing diabetes. So it means to 1 lakh rupees a year. If that person is going to survive for next 30, 40 years, so he's going to spend 40 lakh rupees, right? So again, you cannot say, okay, someone comes and say, give me 2,000 rupees a month for 1 year, I will cure you. That is not going to happen, right? So the point is, where we are standing right now, food additives, sugar-laden foods, high salt, high nitrate, stress, environmental toxins, pollution, antibiotic resistance. So, we are going to develop diseases, right? 90% of us
Correct.
are going to develop diseases. And the point is, we need to understand the, root cause, right,
Yeah.
of the diseases. Okay. So essentially, for that, you have to understand how the molecular interaction, what is happening inside the body, right? How the food, when you eat, how it is processed, how it, because everywhere we have bacteria, right from, our saliva, oral, to small intestine, to large intestine, to skin, to vagina, everywhere, right? And the food is first available to these microbes, whether before it is made available to, the body, right? So essentially what they convert into is what matters, right? So essentially, if you can measure this biology at a molecular level, which we can understand, okay, this, if I'm going to eat, apple or spinach, this is going to happen, whether it is going to give me nutrient or toxin, right? If you can measure that, on a
Yeah.
real time, on a molecular level, you can actually better equipped to take control of health in your own hands, right? So
Yeah.
sugar, if someone says, okay, even glycemic index, glycemic index is a flawed concept, because people think glycemic index, oh, watermelon has 55, so probably, I can eat a bit of it. If someone is having 67, I should not, because it assumes that every individual's body metabolizes the food in the same way, which is wrong, right? So even if you sit on a dinner table with your family, right, all people have the same food, but the body metabolizes the food differently, right? So
Right.
so essentially, we need to, the glycemic index is a flawed concept, right? So you generally, when it comes to sugar consumption, you just measure by GI, which is wrong. So you need to understand how your body is interacting with the food you are eating, whether it is spiking your sugar level. So for instance, banana may spike your sugar level, but bread may not, right? In my case, bread may spike, banana may not, right? So it is so these are few myths which we don't know, and that's why and even if you suppose, if you go and buy a peanut butter from a store, they'll say naturally occurring sugar 2 grams, 2.6 grams, right? They don't know that that naturally occurring sugar is added. It's still added,
Added.
because it is peanut butter doesn't have natural sugar. Right? So either someone is actually writing, okay, I am not adding sugar, I'm adding dates, right? So I'm
Hmm.
adding a date powder. There are certain companies who are doing it, right? So I'm adding a date powder. So there is a 3 gram sugar which is coming from dates, right? So either you subscribe to it, okay, I'm going to eat dates. Dates is maybe it has some sugar, that is fine, that maybe that's in a small intestine, right?
Hmm.
The added
Yes.
sugar is poorly absorbed in small intestine, and it goes to large intestine. Similarly, artificial sweeteners like dark chocolates are coming. Dark chocolates have a lot of sugar, and the chocolates which doesn't have, probably they are adding, emulsifiers and artificial sweeteners, which actually disbalances your microbiome. So these could be a starting point of
Hmm.
mental health issues, stress, depression issues, even a serious issues like dementia, right? Because as I mentioned, it starts 15 years back. So at the age of 28, if you are having a lot of dark chocolates, a lot of artificial sweeteners, a lot of this added sugar, probably you may thinking, okay, I'm eating bad, or theek hai yaar, thoda sa le lo, 10 grams is fine, WHO allows 36-25 grams. So it's fine. I can eat 10 grams. What form of sugar you are consuming, how it is getting metabolized inside the body, all these has to be decoded. So you really need to measure your biology at a molecular level, which
Hmm.
which unfortunately we were not able to do it, earlier 10 years back. But now, because the cost of you know understanding the activities of these microbiome was very high. If you go 10 years back, it was sequencing a sample would take around $2,000, right? But
Yeah.
now you can easily get into at 150 $200, right? Which again further going to go down, right? So as
Yeah.
you shared yesterday that Department of Biotechnology is you starting this Indian Microbiome Genome Project, right? So the
Yeah.
more we build the clinical studies and data around it, the more the cost will go down, right? So essentially, going forward, it would be easy for us to digitize our body at a molecular level, right? And this is what we should do. We should focus on, rather than going for fat recommendations, going for some recommendation given on the blood work, or given on the questionnaire based on or even genetic testing, uh, so
Sushant, if I have to talk about, say, sorry, I'm interrupting because something coming to my mind for the audience. So,
yeah.
what do you think is the right time when what is the right age, or in a particular uh, population, when they should start looking at microbiome? What do you think they should start microbiome analysis? Uh,
I think they should so what I see is the entire life cycle starts, so the microbiome colonization starts when you are born, from your mother's
yeah.
microbiome, gut and vaginal microbiome, right? So the assessment of microbiome should start even, what we do is we start from age 1 year, right? So if a child is, when he start eating some solid, uh, and then probably it is important to fix the microbiome, because child also having, there are child obesity, there are cases of food allergies, intolerances, eczema issues, even autism issues, ADHD issues, right? And all these stems from microbiome. 95% of them, maybe some may have a genetic predisposition, but 95% stems from microbiome. Again, it comes from mother's microbiome. So you should get your child tested at least once a year for the microbiome, right? Starting with the gut microbiome, right? Probably we would be offering, we are offering vaginal microbiome as well. We will be offering oral microbiome also, skin microbiome also going forward, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, start with the gut microbiome because it is the largest colonization of trillions of microbes living inside our body, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then for females, I would recommend they should at least once in 2 years, right? For during pregnant females should get once every trimester, and every adult should get once in 2 years, right? So we have to. That's how you measure your biology, right? And
Yeah.
and
Correct.
consider the. So people will say, oh, it's very costly. It's why to spend 30,000 bucks. So you have to understand how much you are spending on managing your diseases, how much you're going to spend for the next 30, 40 years, right?
Correct.
It will be more than 50 lakh rupees, right? Without any definite outcomes. So it's better to understand, your biology so that, so nobody can help you reverse disease, so until unless you understand your biology. And again, when you understand your biology at an early stage, you have a better control over your health. You know what to eat, what not to eat, what to follow, what is my sleeping patterns, how is my hormonal production is impacted. So, it is again, so hormonal imbalance is impacted by biomicrobiome directly or indirectly, right? So again, these are you know and the problem is, we cannot decode our
Hmm.
hormonal levels, right? For instance, if someone is having PCOS, which is again, a low estrogen, low activity of estrobolome, people generally connected with weight gain, and they focus on just having some diets which can reduce weight, right? It doesn't help you get rid of PCOS,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So essentially, these are few examples. Even even if you talk of DNA testing, there are these companies coming for 15,000, 10,000 bucks. They offer you gene testing, right? And they give you some diet. First thing is your genes are static; it doesn't change for your life. So essentially, your food recommendations will not change. Plus, if you see, even if you gain 10 kgs, 15 kgs, your genes would remain the same. It doesn't change, right? So we really have to understand, whether whatever solution, there are number of solutions in the market, what solution we are trying to target. Is it DNA? Is it blood based? Is it questionnaire based? Is it fat diets? Or is it microbiome? Microbiome, what technologies again is important, right? So what sort of
Hmm.
technologies are we using? 16s RNA, which is just bacteria? Are we just focusing on function diversity, or we are focusing on functional activities, so again, there are different claims in the market, right? So essentially, I'm just deviating, but there are three questions we should ask, right? When we talk of microbiome testing, since we are talking of microbiome testing, first is the lab, whether it is certified or not, right?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
ISO certified, which is generally most of the companies are, which is because most of the companies go through this incubation and get the sample, or it is CAP certified, right? Which is again accreditation in India, right? In US it is CLAI, and second thing is whether which species they are
Hmm.
decoding, right? Are they only bacteria, fungi, yeast, viruses? That is really important.
Hmm.
Third thing is what they are doing. They're just telling you the diversity or the functional activity, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are the three essential questions we should answer during when we are going for a microbiome test, even because these are really important. These have an bearing on your overall results, right? So
Absolutely.
you take a right decisions here, just from a mental health perspective, behavioral therapies and all are fine, but these all developed way 15, 20 years back, right? So essentially, a small what you eat has an impact on your brain, right? So you may not find, but people don't understand why they have dementia, why they have Parkinson's, why they have autism, why they have stress and depression, right? And I've seen some of our customers who were suffering from autism, right? They
Yeah.
told that after following the recommendations, my child's irritation has gone. He has become
Yeah.
more happy, right? uh, no his serotonin score, he feel like playing, and uh,
Yeah.
so it's all connected to what you eat, and what you eat is determined by your microbiome, because it's not only about digesting food, it is involved in virtually various biological functions, right?
Yeah.
So my suggestion
So,
to everyone is here is that do not go for fried rice, do not go for generic nutrition recommendations, understand your biology, Whether you sign up for a service or not, that's a different issue. It's, important to understand, first to educate, understand what works for you, right? You can go for any other microbiome test also. That's particularly fine, but
You
you should.
correctly said, know your body, know your needs,
Yeah.
understand yourself better, so we are not saying that, immediately go for, gene fretletics microbiome test, but what we are trying to do is we're trying to educate that you have to really understand your system, measure it, and based on that, follow certain recommendations which can help you to lead a very good life or better life, I would say. Now, very pertinent question, which will emerge in a lot of minds, particularly from the audience side is, everyone knows Alzheimer is genetic, but the progression time can change, so if I am, for example, uh, doing my microbiome analysis and trying to, ensure that, it gets delayed. So what is your viewpoint on that, genetic versus onset of Alzheimer's,
So,
and where does microbiome stand,
let me today clear this out, right? So, what happens is when we are born during the cell division process, when we are in the process of born, right? There are a lot of genes, mutation of genes happens, right, during the cell division process. But our cellular machinery is so smart that it repairs the DNA, right?
Mm.
Almost 95% of them. So only 5% which which is remaining is what we call as genes mutation, right? And that is what we call as, rare genetic disorders, right?
Mm.
So essentially, you may have a gene which may trigger Alzheimer's, but if that gene is not expressed, overexpressed, right, it is not going to make you develop Alzheimer's, right? For
Mm.
instance, a very simple thing, if you have an FTO gene, which is an obesity gene, right? Uh,
Mm.
all people who have obesity gene doesn't mean they will, become obese.
UP. Yeah,
It is how the genes is being expressed. So again,
correct.
a lot of these expression is impacted by your microbiome, because microbiome, you know eats a lot of these foods you eat and then converts into various metabolites, or byproducts. These byproducts is what impacts your genes expression, both human and microbial genes expression, right? So even if you're going for gene test, probably, human body is only 25,000 genes, microbiome has 25 million genes. So
Yeah.
essentially, you're paying $15,000 for just decoding 1% of your genes. It's something which is just waste of money. To be very frank. And it's a rare genetic disorder can happen. In 5% of the cases. So, but 95% is as unique. Your biology as unique as your fingerprint, right? So
Yeah.
it really doesn't.
So there is a very famous saying that, you are a byproduct of your environment, So inside the body, I think also the same thing which you said that, even for cells, the environment is very important. Everything is a byproduct of that environment, and that environment is being controlled by microbiome, and it impacts the expression of our genes. So very well said. I think we covered a lot of important points here. Any other points, Sushant, which you feel are very plausible, I mean, candidate for discussion?
Today, on the World Health Day, I would like to say here that, so essentially, these are all lifestyle diseases, right? And lifestyle is microbiome. So essentially,
Yeah,
your every aspect of your lifestyle is impacted by your microbiome. So,
yeah,
you should actually be friends with your microbiome. Understand your microbiome. So there are only 10% bad folks inside your gut, right? 90% are good folks. But the point is, it's not about good and bad. It's about what they do, right? So good
correct.
folks can also do bad things, right? Or commensal folks can also do bad things, right?
Yeah.
So it is it is not that is this good, this bad, right? So you need to really understand your microbiome,
Mm.
in detail, and that is a future of health and longevity, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You said it, so that is all about, precise monitoring, precise assessment, what is happening inside the body. Uh, for the audience, who may have joined recently, so microbes came much more earlier than when we came, so 57% of our body is actually microbiome. So they control us. We are not controlling them. What we eat, they eat it first, and then, it becomes available to the body. So here on World Health Day, we are trying to share, what is happening on microbiome science globally, and how, if you lead right kind of uh, lifestyle, right kind of food recommendations based on your microbiome inside, that can impact you in a big way. And as we said last time as well, we love greenery outside, but in the body also we should be very mindful that we keep it. Right kind of greenery has to be kept inside the body, inside your gut, inside your various body cavities and tissues. So thank you very much, Sushant. I think this is going to be really helpful for the audience, and we look forward to comments and suggestions from the audience. If they want to cover any important points, they can message us, and we can take those in the coming programs, what we are going to do.
And that we are also, for everyone who is listening, we are starting a question answer Wednesday next week. Every Wednesday we'll be doing it, right? So we'll be, demystifying all the, uh, you know, uh, beliefs and claims which are there, which are not helping, right? So
Yeah,
starting with fat diets, obesity, type 2 diabetes, we're covering a lot of aspects, right? So
absolutely.
yes, sir. So
So
fine.
thank you very much,
Yeah.
Sushant, and really appreciate your time. And let us keep connecting with the audience and help them with
Yeah.
decoding this particular science. Thank
Yes.
you.
So thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.